On to passage 3. Let's quickly look at the first sentence or two. All right, so this is a passage about titration and pH levels, which is a common subject on ACT science test. Let's just jump to the questions. The first question, they're telling us to look at figure 2, so that's the where. And we're looking at the volume going from 0 to 20 for NaOH, and we're asked to find the pH level. So let's look at figure 2. Okay, the first thing you want to do when looking at figures is to look for the x and the y-axes and see what they represent. So the x-axis here is the volume of NaOH in milliliters, same as the question, and the y-axis is the pH level. And so because we were told we're going from 0 milliliters of NaOH, so 0 corresponds to a pH of 2, and at 20, the pH corresponds to 2.5. So it increased from, the pH increased from 2 to 2.5, which would be answer choice C. Question 15 is asking us to look at figure 2, so that's the where. The who is the greatest variation in pH level. And the why is because we're finding their corresponding volume. Question 15 is one of those that it might be easier to start with looking at the answer choices. So the first choice, F, is saying that the volume is increased from 40 to 45. So let's look at figure 2. Going from 40 to 45, we see that the pH levels on the y-axis is increasing by a half or maybe by 1. So let's just say about 1. Now let's look to the second choice between 45 and 55. Well, between 45 to 55, we see that the y-axis, the corresponding y coordinates, have increased by about 7. And then let's look at the next one between 55 to 60. So 55 was here and 60 is about here. So the corresponding pH level, again, that's a small increase. That's about 1. And lastly, this is the biggest increase in volume between 80 to 100 at this end of the graph. But again, the pH level is barely changing. The y-axis is not changing much. So the answer would be choice G. For question 16, the where is figure 1, and the who is the smallest variation of pH, and the why is because we're finding their corresponding volume. So it's similar to question 15, but this time we're looking at a different figure and we're looking for the smallest variation. So it gives you a good exercise in finding trends and graphs. So for choice A, it's between 0 to 5. So let's first identify those. Choice B is between 40 to 55. Okay. And then choice C is between 55 to 60. Oops. And lastly, choice D was between 80 to 100. So let's look at their corresponding Y values, which would be the pH for us here. So between 80 to 100, we see that the Y value is increasing very minimally. It's almost constant. For the choice before that, we see that there's still some increase in the pH level. For choice, the one before that, we see that there's actually a huge jump. And between 0 and 5 milliliters, there's still a jump in the pH level. Now, amongst all of these, the last choice between 80 to 100 is where we've had the smallest variation in pH level. So the answer for choice 16 would have been choice D. Question 17, let's start by finding the where. So we're looking at figure 2. And the who, pH level is 5, so that's the who. And the why is because we're finding its corresponding volume. So let's look at figure 2. The x-axis is the volume, the y-axis is the pH. So we want the pH to be 5. And we'll come down to the x-axis, and we see that corresponds to a volume of 50 milliliters. So it would have been choice H. Question 18's where is figure 1 and 2. So they want you to look at two figures and make a conclusion. The who are the starting points of these figures. And the why is a conclusion we want to compare these two. So let's start by looking at the figures. So the starting point for figure 1 would be at the very left. So this is about a pH level of about 3. And for figure 2, the pH level at the starting point is about 2. So let's look at our answer choices and jot it down. So figure 1 was 3, figure 2 was 2. So that means that with these types of questions, you can always eliminate 2 of the choices because they will have the wrong facts. And for us here, that would be choice A and also choice C. These have the incorrect facts about the graphs. Now, as I said, there will be 2 to 3 questions on ACT Science where the test makers will ask about your science background. pH level is a very common topic on these tests, which is why I put it in the practice test. So it's important for you to remember that an acid has a pH level of between 0 to 7, and a base has a pH level of between 7 and 14. Now for acids, the smaller the pH level, the stronger the acid. So let's look here. Which choice would convey that? Given that figure 2 had a smaller pH level, it was the stronger acid, which would lead us to choice D.